I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we are going to review the first album from a band from Iceland called Of Monsters and Men. They're getting pretty popular. They got a big single out that everyone's loving with a sweet music video. The album is titled My Head is an Animal. As I said, these guys are Icelandic. They have a very specific sound that they're going for that I think Tom and I, we were discussing, you know, before we turned the camera on, it reflects Mumford & Sons, the Arcade Fire, a lot of just really kind of indie pop that they're just trying to construct this sound. Now,
it's that folk rock sound, but it's more the pop appealing side of it, you know, where it's not like you're really like deep in the South or something. I mean, obviously these guys are from Iceland, but it's quite a different world.
Right.
But still, that's the sound they're going for.
They do a lot of vocal harmonies, kind of like the Arcade Fire did on Funeral, and
the big anthemic kind of thing.
They're going for anthem sounds. There's 3 songs on here that I think would fit the indie pop anthem, you know, descriptor. The other thing that they do is they bring in horns to do accents, and it works well sometimes, and it gets kind of cheesy sometimes too. Overall, I think this is an album that I think a lot of people, I could really understand a lot of people loving this album, and a lot of people hating this album.
Well, it sounds really in vogue right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, a decade ago, it seems like people could not possibly care less about folk style music, and now it's seeping its way into everything.
Right.
Have you noticed that? Yeah. It's funny. So I mean, this is really, it comes along at a good time, and honestly, I'm okay with it. I like that this sound. It's a little more raw. It's a little more real. I like that's getting popular. At the same time, I don't think these guys pull it off quite the best, but they're still pretty good.
Right. Now, what was your overall opinion? What do you take away from this album, Tom?
What I take away from it is I see a lot of potential more than anything. I think that these guys obviously are great performers. The reason they got so big in Iceland is because they won this big Battle of the Bands competition. They were starting to gain a lot of momentum from those kinds of events. And so, I mean, from that, you can tell that they just have to have a killer live show. You can, even on the studio recordings, you can tell they're just born performers.
Yeah, there's an energy there.
Absolutely. And so, obviously, that's going to translate into a live show, probably even better than an album. And so, I think that's the big thing for me, is that when I listen to this, it's like they have the ideas, they know their sound, and they're going for, as you said, such a specific, such a honed and focused sound, but I think it actually gets away from them at times. I actually think it ends up being a little bit of a downfall because they don't give themselves enough room to breathe and enough room to play around and to go mess in other people's sandboxes and stuff like that, if you get my analogy there. So because of that, it's like they're going for this anthemic emotional appeal, like they're trying to make every song on this album have the impact of, say, like Wake Up by the Arcade Fire. But really, because they're trying so hard for it, it ends up falling a little flat because to me it's not convincing. It doesn't, I don't quite buy it, I don't quite feel it. So it just kind of ends up sounding like they're trying too hard for something that they're not quite achieving. Whereas I feel like the bands who can really achieve that emotional sound don't have to try because it's just in their hearts. It just pours out of them. I don't think they're quite there yet.
Right. And part of what, you know, both the bands we think that they're drawing their influence from, Mumford & Sons and Arcade Fire, have very, very emotive vocalists. You know, Win Butler of the Arcade Fire and from Mumford & Sons.
I think that's right.
Marcus Mumford. Yeah, thank you. You know, they're just so convincing, and when they just, you know, they scream at you almost, but they're not screaming, they're singing, but you can just feel this raw intensity, like it really means something to them. I never get that on this album. In fact, there's 2 vocalists here. It's kind of like, they kind of sound like the vocalists from the XX.
I totally agree. Yeah. I was thinking that the whole time, but obviously just very different style.
Yeah, obviously, and like, but my thing is that they never really emote in their voice. It's like they're just singing pop songs, and I feel like that's what leads the authenticity. And plus, I gotta criticize the female singer a little bit because I felt like she kind of reused her vocal parts song to song, and I thought that kind of just plagued the band because I think the biggest issue with this, kind of taking the next step off of what you were saying, Tom, was that they were just so focused on making their sound, of having that sound that is that folky pop sound, and then wrapping it around the piano and the accordion and the electric guitars that they're using, and just this blend, that they actually let the songwriting get away from them. They actually didn't let the songs develop into anything. There's a couple tracks on here, especially in the first half of the album, that just kind of start, and then they'll establish what the song is, and then they'll kind of just drift off and end. And it's like, what was the point of this? It didn't really convey to me any reason for having that song, so there's no warrant for me to care at all about it.
Like, it seems like to them, the idea of a climax of a song is just where it gets the loudest.
Right.
It's just where they've added the most things going on. But really, there's more to it than that.
And even when they don't, and even when they didn't add the dynamics, I mean, it's just, the song is just this 3 or 4 minute length of music, and that's just all it is. Well, we're looking for something a bit more expansive, especially after what the type of sound that they're clearly going for. Now, Tom, this is something that I've noticed. You know, your 3 track picks are on the first half of the album. I actually felt that the second half of the album was stronger in the songwriting department than the first half. I thought the first half was kind of where it gets weak, especially, you know, I didn't think it started off the greatest. I'd say that, like, to me, the first half of this album, I'd score in like the low to mid 60s, and the second half I'd score in like the upper 70s. I really got into track 7, 6 Weeks, and I like the closer, Yellow Light. But so I think that, you know, just based on what we're seeing with us, and you guys out there who follow VIMTV, you're going to have a different variety of track picks on this, and a different reaction. I think that the reactions from My Head is an Animal are going to be all over the place. Like I said, you're either going to love this, or you're going to be like, this is crap, I don't want to listen to it. You know, if you're and you might end up in the middle, you could be anywhere, really, on this album, because it's kind of it's very rich, I think. And the sound, you know, I really am interested to see where this goes. I think this album shows a lot of promise.
I think it does show a lot of promise, but really what it's going to take is for these guys' initial success to not get to their heads.
Right, because Middle Talks is huge.
Yeah, it really is, and I'm really afraid that they're going to see that and be like, oh man, we got something going, we'd better do the same thing again. I'm really afraid they're going to fall into that trap. If these guys can take their success, not let it get to their heads, expand their sound, I think that if they take the right step with their next album, it could be huge, it could be really good.
I totally agree, and if they trip and do the wrong thing, or don't work on the things they need to work on, it could just be this catastrophic
and we'll be there to talk about it.
Right. We will be there. What did you guys think of this album? Have you listened to it? If you have, like, what's your favorite tracks? What was the general? What score would you give this album? Tell us why, because that's what we're all about. Communicating about the new music that's coming out, about music in general, actually. Let us know. www.velocitiesandmusic.com.
Can we give our scores?
Oh, what are you giving it?
I'm giving 76.
I'm going 70. You liked it a little more than me.
A little bit, yeah. I just enjoyed it overall. I did.
All right.
Okay.
Let us know what score you guys gave it, because, you know, like we said, kind of balancing out, you know, there's tracks we love, tracks we really didn't like. So it's all over the place. www.velocitiesandmusic.com, youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Also, please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. That's where we do all of our communicating with you, and you make VIMTV what it is, so thanks for watching. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.